Pasta and type 2 diabetes. It's a match not made in heaven. But if you believe traditional media, you are allowed to eat whole wheat pasta if you have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. But if you look online, you'll often see messages that you should avoid pasta completely, also the whole wheat options. So what is true? I'm Ali from Illness Free Life, and in this video you'll learn whether you can eat pasta if you have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes, and what pasta-like products you could consider if you want to eat pasta and have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. Traditional pasta is made from durum wheat, which is a harder type of wheat, which makes it able for you to make the harder types of pastas we know as spaghetti, macaroni, and noodles. And when it comes to traditional pasta, there are two options to choose from, either the white pasta or the whole wheat pasta. And they are both made from the same grain, they just use different components. Whole wheat pasta uses the whole grain, and white pasta only uses the middle part, the flour body of that grain. And this also explains why white pasta tends to only contain carbohydrates and not a lot of dietary fibers, proteins, fats, vitamins, or minerals. You basically are just using the carbohydrates part of the grain and removing everything else. And with whole pasta, you're using everything of that grain, which also explains why it's higher in dietary fiber content, higher in protein content, vitamins, and minerals. So white pasta and whole wheat pasta are basically made from the same base product. They just process the hell out of the grain to make eventually white pasta. Now, the question of course is whether traditional pasta is healthy for people with blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. And unfortunately, it isn't. Regardless if you choose the white one or the whole wheat one, they're both not ideal. Let's start with the white one. White pasta tends to contain between 60 and 70% carbohydrates and sugars per unit of weight, and somewhere between 1 and 3% dietary fibers per unit of weight. These ratios are way off. And by this I mean, if you eat white pasta, you'll ingest way too much carbohydrates and sugars in one sitting and too little dietary fibers to compensate for this. And we need these dietary fibers to first lower the amount of carbohydrates and sugars we absorb from that meal, and we also need them to slow down the absorption speed with which this happens. Because otherwise a lot of carbohydrates and sugars will end up in your bloodstream way too fast and way too much, and this will eventually lead to insulin resistance because your pancreas has to produce a lot of insulin to combat the high blood sugars in your blood. And unfortunately, it's not a lot better for whole wheat pasta. Whole wheat pasta also contains between 60 and 70% carbohydrates and sugars per unit of weight, but it tends to contain more dietary fibers per unit of weight. This is somewhere between 6 and 7%. So yes, it does contain twice as much or maybe 3 times as much dietary fibers per unit of weight, but the ratios are unfortunately still off. Yes, whole wheat pasta is better than white pasta, but you're really comparing something that is really bad with something that is bad. So in contrast, it will look better, but it's definitely not healthy. But this doesn't mean that you're not able to eat pasta or not allowed to eat pasta if you want to. There are 3 workarounds around the problem of pasta, of it containing too much carbohydrates and sugars and too little dietary fibers. But before we discuss those, do you like this video and want to receive more of these videos? Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for free to this YouTube channel. That way you'll never miss a video we publish, and you'll help us reach more people to improve their blood sugar problems and reverse their diabetes with healthy nutrition. And now back to the video. Like I said, there are 3 workarounds when it comes to pastas and being able to eat them if you have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. The first one is to artificially improve the composition of the pasta you're eating. And this might sound very technical and scientific, but it's really not. By this, I mean that you should combine the pasta you're eating, the whole wheat pasta in this case, because white pasta is definitely a no-go, with a lot of vegetables. By Combining it with low-carb vegetables that are high in dietary fiber, you artificially improve the nutritional value of the whole wheat pasta. By mixing the two, you'll lower the amount of carbohydrates and sugars per bite, and you'll increase the amount of dietary fibers per bite. So basically, you're somewhat diluting the carbohydrates and sugar content of the pasta, and you're increasing or enriching the amount of dietary fibers of the pasta. And it's even better if you also change the composition of your plate. Preferably, you'll have a plate in front of you that consists of at least 50% healthy vegetables, 25% of the pasta, and maybe 25% of the protein source you're eating, either beef or chicken or fish or whatever you decided to eat. So basically, it comes down to not seeing the pasta as the main dish, but more of a side thing you're eating with a lot of vegetables. By combining it with low-carb vegetables or vegetables that are high in dietary fiber, you artificially improve the nutritional value of the pasta. So that's one way of improving the composition of whole wheat pasta if you don't have access to other types of pastas, which we will discuss now. Option 2 is to change your whole wheat pasta for pasta-like products. Think, for example, of low-carb pasta made from vegetables, or the konjac jam, also known as shirataki pasta or noodles. Pasta that is predominantly made from lentils or chickpeas, and whole wheat pasta that is enriched with extra dietary fibers. Now, whether you have access to these pastas really depends on where you live on Earth. In some places, the best pasta you will be able to buy is the whole wheat pasta. In that case, use the first tip from this video to improve the composition of your pasta. But if you live in a somewhat developed country, you should be able to buy one or more than one of these options. Low-carb pastas tend to be made from either vegetables or a protein base like pea protein, or from a very, very low-carb plant such as the konjac. Noodles or pasta made from this plant is traditionally used in Japan, and it's known as shirataki, and these pastas don't really contain anything really. They're super low carb and they contain non-digestible fibers for us as humans, meaning that they have little to no effect on your blood sugar or your type 2 diabetes, which is of course ideal. The same thing goes for pastas made from a flour that is made from a bean, such as lentils or chickpea. These flours tend to be lower in carbohydrates compared to regular flour and higher in dietary fibers, which is of course good. And regular whole wheat pasta that is enriched with extra dietary fibers is of course also a better option than regular whole wheat pasta. Yes, it still will contain between the 60 and 70% carbohydrates and sugars per unit of weight, but it will contain way more dietary fibers to compensate for this. Whatever you choose really depends on where you live on Earth, but all of the options I just gave you will give you an option that is either lower in carbohydrates and sugars when compared to whole wheat pasta, or higher in dietary fibers, and often it will be a combination of both, which is of course the thing you want. You want it to be both lower in carbohydrates and sugars and higher in dietary fibers. Option 3 is to make your own pasta from vegetables. You could, for example, buy a spiralizer and make your own pasta from zucchini. Yes, it won't feel and taste and look like traditional pasta, but zucchini is a very, very low-carb vegetable that is okay dietary fiber-wise, but it's definitely way better than any store-bought pasta you can buy. And you can make it on your own, or in some supermarkets you can actually buy it at the vegetable aisle. And like I said, it's not traditional pasta and it looks nowhere near traditional pasta, but it has somewhat of a pasta structure and you can eat it with a sauce, and it's way healthier for your blood sugar and type 2 diabetes. And the same thing goes, for example, of lasagna sheets made from pumpkin. Yes, they're not traditional lasagna sheets, but that's good because traditional lasagna sheets are definitely not that healthy. But lasagna sheets made from pumpkin, for example, are a lot healthier, and you can make them yourself, or in developed countries, you can find them in most supermarkets. And another option is to replace the pasta you're using with, for example, beans. Macaroni has somewhat of the same structure or form as, for example, cannelloni beans or any other type of bean. Yes, I understand it's not real pasta and it doesn't have the same bite or flavor or structure, but it has somewhat of a similar form. You could mix with some sauce to eat it as a pasta. Because at the end of the day, whether you choose white pasta or whole wheat pasta, they're both not ideal for your blood sugar and type 2 diabetes. The white pasta is way worse than whole wheat pasta, and whole wheat pasta isn't ideal to eat if you have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. It's better to look for alternatives or to change the composition of your meal to make it somewhat healthier or healthy. And like I said, the best things you can do is, if you only have access to whole wheat pasta, is by mixing it with a lot of low-carb vegetables that are high in dietary fibers, or change it with pasta-like products such as low-carb pastas, pastas made from beans, or pastas that are enriched with extra dietary fibers. Or make your own pasta-like products with vegetables such as zucchini or pumpkin, or just use beans as a replacement for the pasta. So to summarize, if you have blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes, it's not really healthy to eat traditional pasta, whether white or whole wheat. And there are options out there, and it really depends on where you live on earth, which is available. But at the end of the day, regular pasta is definitely a no-go when it comes to blood sugar and type 2 diabetes. And if you want to read more about this subject, I have a free article for you about this in the link of the description of this video, and there you can also download our diabetes free secret. This is a free giveaway we give away in which we teach you what the main causes of blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes are, and what you can do to prevent, improve and fully reverse these problems with a healthy lifestyle. If you have any questions about this video, or you want me to look at specific pasta replacements you found in the supermarket, leave a comment down below and I'll see you in the next video.